Good morning and welcome to Tip Off. Coming to you live from Denver. Doing it a little differently today. Hopefully it'll work. Another road attempt with all of our technical problems this year. I figure we should solve it here sometime pretty soon. We got like 4 road games left. We'll figure it out. So today what I'm trying to do is instead of wiring and wearing a headset, which actually makes me more comfortable and makes me broadcast better, I'm wiring it through, just taking the microphone straight off the computer. You can then see the video. If we need to do a screen share, we should be able to do it, and maybe we don't overload the system. We'll see whether this works or not. Hopefully it does. We've just had so many little issues all season long, so hopefully it will, and hopefully I won't be too funky. I've gotten so used to broadcasting with headphones on that it's weird for me to not. It's really weird when I go out for dinner with friends, and then I can't talk to them until I put my headphones on. And then when I put my headphones on and I walk around the dinner party, I'm totally comfortable. Okay, so I agree. It should be no different than just talking to you. I'm not that weird yet. I hope you're well. We're here in Denver. Jazz will play tonight. For those of you who would like our art tour, there's the art tour. For those of you on video, there's the art tour. Not particularly interesting hotel room today. My view? Oh, my view is that of really nothing. There you go. There's the view today. Beautiful Denver. It's supposed to be 70 degrees. All right, a bunch of things to jump into. Remember the Derek Favors one-on-one interview is still out there and available for you. I'll be on with DJ and PK. I'll try to podcast that back out for you as well. I think that's about it on the housekeeping stuff. What else do I have? Oklahoma City game Saturday. Tickets are available to see Russell Westbrook. Probably worth doing in person. Get those at utahjazz.com. All right, let's get straight to the NBA 5. I have no production doing it this way, though, I don't think. I could probably do it really hollow production. It would sound like even less good than this already does. All right, so let's do the NBA 5. Maybe the greatest Reddit of all time. I'm not a big Reddit person. I don't quite understand Reddit. I haven't figured out how to use Reddit. Certainly haven't figured out what Reddit could do for me. If someone wanted to explain how I should use Reddit, all for it. But somebody asked Bill Walton what the story about being milked is. There's the legendary story, Bill Walton doing a broadcast with Dave Pash says, "I've been milked." And Walton's response was, "It's the most pleasurable experience in the world. When you're on a great team and you get hot, your teammates milk you dry. They wear you out. There's nothing like being on a great team. When you're on a bad team, you get hot. They freeze you out because they figure they have to get theirs before the game's over. Never forget," Walton writes, "happiness ends with selflessness." Excuse me. Never forget, happiness ends when selfishness begins. No, selfishness begins. Sorry. Never forget, happiness ends when selfishness begins. I love being hot, and there's nothing in the world like being milked. How beautiful is that? That, my friends, is Bill Walton at his finest. Gotta love having that out there. A few other notes. The best nickname ever has come out in the NBA. This is a great story. So Nick Stoyaskis of the Sacramento Kings is playing in a game, and somebody is watching it and has the closed caption up. And it says Sauce Castillo instead of Nick Stoyaskis. He saves it, sends it out, and next thing you know, it's all around. All of his players have found out about it, and now everybody refers to Nick Stoyaskis as Sauce Castillo. Okay, that's the best. That's the best one I've ever heard. That's what nicknames should be, not this whole like fabricated broadcaster, this and that. They should come out of something like Daffy Dean and Dizzy Dean. Like, where did that come from? Or some crazy grandma calling you something that just stays with you for the rest of your life. That is what is supposed to be how this works and how nicknames are happening. Sorry, my text is going off here for a second. Let me make sure that's nothing. There, solved. So now whenever you see Nick Stoyaskis, you call him Sauce Castillo. Two interesting other notes. Tim Kawakami did a piece on the San Jose Mercury, I think, or whatever they call Bay Area Group now, where he followed Steph Curry's pregame shooting routine. Curry put up 182 shots. He made 120. He works on no different than Ray Allen, real shots that he would take during a game. He does almost the exact same routine before every game for just over 15 minutes. His goal is to make 31 threes and 82 pointers of various types. This is why guys become better shooters. Right, that's the 182 he just puts up before a game. What about a practice when there's no dead time on it, or before a practice, or before a shooter? I mean, these guys take so many shots every day. It's why they become better shooters. It's why when we're talking about Trey Burke the other day, it's like he's going to eventually make those shots. It's why you believe Dante Exum should get better. In the process of shooting as poorly as he is, and his touch is comes off his fingers a little funky and doesn't seem to have always a great feel. I think some of it's strength, but it's interesting to hear what Steph Curry does before every game and the level of detail that he goes into it. Then the other one was an interesting story from Reggie Jackson, who's now with Detroit, saying he found out in Oklahoma City has a problem with his hands getting extremely cold. Once I started running, I start losing feeling in my extremities, and the Oklahoma City training staff, especially Joe Sharp, found a way to get me hand warmers, keep my hands warm so I can keep feeling the ball. I go out in the game, and my hands would get to the point where they were literally freezing. They're basically winter gloves, but from a hunting store, and they got hand warmers in them. You push a button on them, and then they keep my hands nice and warm and ready for the game. That actually sounds like a pretty serious situation for Reggie Jackson for his ongoing career if he's playing 30 minutes a night and he needs hand warmers every time he comes to the bench. All right, let me screen share with you, if I may. I got what we've been doing all week long, the expected effective field goal percentage of players based on where their shots are distributed around the shot clock. I got two requests. I got Draymond Green and I got Chris Middleton requests. And the Draymond Green one was interesting. So both of them actually were. Draymond Green, and you can send me a request at dlock09@gmail.com. Here, let me just back up for those who haven't followed this all week on a Friday. They just tuned in. So the idea is in the shot clock, depending where you shoot, there's an expected effective field goal percentage. By the way, we really should change effective field goal percentage to equivalent field goal percentage because it weighs three-point shooting. And what it really is the equivalent if you were to take twos. But anyway, if you shoot in the first 3 seconds of the shot clock, the effective field goal percentage is 57. The next four, it's 58.6. Then it's 51. Then it drops to 48.7. Then 46. And then finally, in the last 4 seconds, it's 39.7. So if you take a lot of shots in the final 4 seconds or even in the final 7 seconds of the shot clock, you're going to shoot less well by the way league averages are. If you make shots in the final 7 seconds of the shot clock, those should be more valuable than shots that are made earlier in the shot clock because they're harder to make, is the idea here. And, for example, Gordon Hayward takes 21% of his shots in the final 7 seconds of the shot clock, 8% of them in the final 4 seconds. He's right on league average in the final 4 seconds, and he's better than league average he's better than league average in the 4 to 7 second range. So give Gordon credit. He's figured out how to play late in the shot clock. Trey Burke plays got to be one of the most in the league. 28.2% of his possessions are in the final 7 seconds, 12.3%, which has to be the highest in the final 4, and he's a little below the league averages. And then we took Trey Burks all the way out to the point where his expected effective field goal percentage is only 46.1. League average is 50, but because Trey shoots so much late in the shot clock, he ends up with just 46.1 as his expected field goal percentage along the way. Sorry, I'm trying something here. Let's see if this works. This would make our life better. I'm nervous about this. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to work. All right, delete that. Oh, that actually might help us out a little bit. Nope, not enough. So I'll move that eventually so that we can see it all on one screen here. So Trey's is 46.1. Gordon's is 47.4. Gordon's a bit higher. We did Steph Curry because they play so fast in the shot clock. He's at 49.7. And then James Harden's at 47.1, right, with Gordon. So I got asked about Draymond Green and Russell Westbrook's shoots very early in shot clocks. So Draymond Green shoots 12.6% of his possessions in the final 7 seconds and only 4 in the final 4 seconds, which is very little. So his expected effective field goal percentage is 49.7, so it's higher. He's at 51.8, so he's above his average, but not as far above his average as maybe someone might expect. And he takes most of his threes early. He's not a great three-point shooter, frankly. He's a good example here is if you look at Draymond Green, as the shot clock goes, his three-point shooting really starts to fall. And late in the shot clock, if you can stick him with a shot, you're in pretty good shape. 30% and 25% from three. Chris Middleton was the other one who's just the in vogue hot name out there right now for all the numbers people. He's having an amazing year for Milwaukee. He's a restricted free agent. Milwaukee very well may have traded Brandon Knight so they could re-sign Chris Middleton. Middleton uses about 17% of his possessions late in the shot clock, which is a pretty decent amount. Remember, Draymond Green was at 12. Russell Westbrook is really low, is 11. James Harden, who is at 20, which is high. Steph Curry only uses 7% of his possessions in the final 7 seconds of the shot clock. An incredible number to be that low. So Middleton uses most of his from 15 to 7, but he gets down a little bit. And his expected effective field goal percentage is only 47.2 because of that, and he's at 53.4. So he's just bona fide having an unbelievable year. His late shot clock three-point shooting is crazy good. His effective field goal percentage late is obviously good. So very, very impressive for Chris Middleton. Thanks. I think it was Bill Murphy who sent those in to me. You can email me at dlock09@gmail to get those. All right, let's move to the Jazz with no production. I can't do Trey Burke imitations, I think. Gordon Hayward is listed as probable tonight. Rodney Hood is not with the team. I don't know what that means, honestly. But obviously, he's either very sick or they're trying to figure out what's going on. So we'll figure out when we learn. I'll let you know on that. Bunch of roster moves yesterday. Let me see if I can explain them. I kind of alluded to this on and off recently, and I realized Ian Clark was in trouble and didn't really want to just put it out there because I thought it was kind of rude to Ian. But here's the situation. Ian Clark, if he's not going to be a part of the future, which he just has never quite developed, then when Ian Clark's expiring contract does you no good. And the reason is if once the season's over and that contract's expired, then that cap space is no longer you no longer have that cap space. You can't trade Ian Clark. You can't use Ian Clark in an aggregate of a deal. And remember, the rule on trades is the trades have to be within. If you trade $8 million, you've got to get about, depending on if you're trading with a luxury tax team or not, there's a limit to how much money you either can send out or receive back. Right? So if you have to be within a percentage. And it changes a little depending if it's a luxury tax team or not. So that's why I'm not being quite specific. But just assume for a second, like if you're getting $8 million of a player back to you, that you probably have to you have to at least send out $7 million. What the Jazz are doing is putting themselves in a position where if there's a team who's going to have a luxury tax problem in the possible or who needs to clear some cap space in free agency, the Jazz can make a deal. The Jazz could not have traded Ian Clark. So that contract would just go by the wayside. But now the Jazz have Jack Cooley on a multi-year deal, which is the rest of this year and in all likelihood the next 2 years non-guaranteed. Same deal probably that Chris Johnson has, non-guaranteed for the next 2 years. Same deal that Bryce Cotton probably has, probably non-guaranteed for the next 2 years. Couple this with Trevor Booker, who's not guaranteed for the next year, and now the Jazz have somewhere in the range of probably, I think Ben Anderson had the exact number, but somewhere in the range of $8 million that they can put together aggregately on draft night, and this is part 2 of this, is that they did this all 30 days prior to the NBA draft. So now, 90 days prior to the NBA draft, now those trades can all be made because once you sign a player, you have to wait 90 days until you can trade any of the players you've just signed. So for the Jazz, all of those players that exist out there that they just made these moves for, they're not eligible to move until, the day before the draft, which kind of works out pretty well for the Jazz. So if you think about this for a second and try to play around with it, and I have no idea if this is a hypothetical that actually works, but I just thought I'd play on the playing yesterday. I went through all the box scores the day before. Who would I want? Who would I not? So I'm going to use one of those players. And actually, I think it's, I'm not saying this is going to happen in any way, shape, or form, but I am saying I think this is a somewhat realistic, possibility. So the Jazz could trade Trevor Booker, Elijah Millsap, actually, Jack Cooley, Bryce Cotton, Chris Johnson. All of those players are non-guaranteed contracts for next year. Comes out to about $8 million, plus we have, our 7 second-round picks and 2 other first-round picks. Those are a lot of little pieces. But let's say, for example, to try to give you not to say this is realistic, but just to give you an example of how a deal like that could work. If the Clippers, who have $56 million in contracts next year already accounted for, and they need to sign DeAndre Jordan to a max deal to keep him, suddenly realize that they can't afford to keep J.J. Redick, who has $7 million this year and $7 million next year on his salary. Pretty good outside shooter, matches what we want, and we want J.J. Redick. Now, there's 2 things that could happen here. The Jazz could just trade for a salary dump, Trevor Booker, all of these players that just signed for J.J. Redick. Okay, I'm not sure the Clippers are willing to do that, but let's flip it around. Maybe the Clippers need a lower price player, and so the Jazz decide, you know what, we'll take J.J. Redick for 2 years, and you trade your first-round draft pick coming up in the upcoming draft, the 10th pick, with the combination of players we've aforementioned, for J.J. Redick. Maybe you get something else, a future first or something else back in the long run. But that's the way this works. You can decide whether you like that deal or not. Maybe for J.J. Redick, who I think is fabulous, you should just get the salary dump if they're in desperate situations. But also, right, they're going to try to compete for a championship, and so maybe you've got to give them your first-round pick, and you now get a veteran who pushes you forward. I don't know whether you could do it for Wilson Chandler, who's a player on Denver, who makes $7 million because he's a team option. I guess it's a team option, so you could trade for his team option. You could decide you want Wilson Chandler. You can run through now and go find guys whose salaries are somewhere between $5 and probably $10 million, maybe $9 million, and see whether or not you think you couple our draft pick with all our non-guaranteed contracts, and does that team, do you pull off a deal there? Trevor Booker's $4.7 million only partially guaranteed next year. And so that, actually Grant Jarrett fits into this as well, by the way, as another one who's under contract in that way. But Ian Clark was one who was not, that he, by his contract expiring, you could not move Ian Clark, so that really you had lost the purpose of having Ian Clark on your roster in that same fashion. Okay? So Jody Meeks, let's say Detroit decides they don't want Jody Meeks anymore, $6 million. They got to sign Greg Monroe. You're probably not giving up a first-round draft pick for that, but you're putting together some sort of package there where you're using those expirings and you're for Jody Meeks, and you're probably, you're not getting up your draft pick. Roy Hibbert and David West opt out, and does Indiana decide that George Hill's $8 million is too much and want to move George Hill? And now you probably are giving up your first-round draft pick along with that to get George Hill in some capacity. I mean, you can just kind of walk through the rosters of the teams and play around and see who you see. But that's what the Jazz are doing, is putting them in a position to be able to get that done. Let's take a wild card, right? Like, I don't think the Jazz could get to $12 million. They couldn't get to $12 million, so they have to be something tricky. But does Toronto suddenly decide they don't want Kyle Lowry anymore? Oh, whoa, go! Let's be in position there to get that done, and that's what the Jazz front office is doing. They're putting themselves in a position to be able to get those deals done, and that's what this was all about. This is similar to what the Jazz did to get Steve Novak in a second-round pick from Toronto. They took a contract. They gave them expirings. We got Steve Novak. Steve Novak didn't work out. Okay, fine. You took a shot at it. But you got an extra second-round draft pick out of it for non-guaranteed contracts. The same thing with Carrick Felix. The Jazz had a bunch of players there, took on Carrick Felix. Didn't work out. They got another second-round draft pick. It's another asset. But you're going to swing and miss a bunch, but eventually, hopefully, you hit on one of these and you try to get something done. So you could use them for anything as dramatic as what I've talked about, or it could be as non-dramatic as you can parse them into different pieces along the way, where there's a $4 million player or a $5 million, where you put 3 or 4 of them together. So that's the concept. And Ian Clark's contract expired, and so therefore didn't have that value. That is today's edition of Tip Off. Hope you're good.